I recently had a conversation with a student of mine who has been a diligent studier of jazz trombone for a good amount of time, but has been struggling with the question of why does it sometimes feel like you can practice and practice and practice, but then when you go on the bandstand, you feel like you're drawing a blank every time. And all the things that you've practiced have gone out the window. This is a very common thing that happens. It's a very common thing, and I wanted to address it. There are two missing links, I think, that happen in the practicing and performance of jazz trombone. It could be any instrument, though. It's not just jazz trombone. One is there's a big distinction between knowing something and really having something internalized. So there's memorizing and there is internalizing. If you don't internalize, if you don't practice long enough to internalize, you're having to think too much about what it is you're going to play when you go to play. And because it's a real-time music, jazz, improvisation in a jazz context is a real-time music, it can be very difficult for us to access any of that information because it's not internalized. It's not in our muscle memory or our brain's muscle memory or our ear's muscle memory, however you want to think about it. So on trombone, that means getting lots of things under your slide. So lots of teachers talk about the major scales, obviously. And then in jazz, a lot of times we get stuck on things like playing arpeggios, 1-3-5-7, 1-3-5-3, etc. All these kind of basic shapes. And we think about them and we can do them, right? When we think, oh yeah, let me play this, and you play it. That's okay, that's fine. But you actually have to think faster than that. You have to have it that you know what it is faster than you can think about it. So if I say play F7, what immediately happens in my brain is I see all the notes, all that simultaneously, bing, and I just know what the sound is. And I know what the positions are all together, like as one thing, like one unit. So I'm not thinking F7, F, A, C, E flat. I'm thinking one unit, grouping these items together, and I have it so much under my slide that I know what it is without having to think about it. That's a basic example of F7, but that goes for everything. So in my fundamentals class, if I know there are some students on this stream now, you know that we start with just being able to play around the circle of fourths, triads, major, minor, augmented, diminished. You'd be surprised how many really talented college students cannot do it. They have to think about what is this, especially in the less familiar keys, B, E, A. They don't know their G flat augmented triad very well. But you have to not just practice it and be able to do some kind of exercise, but you have to discover that you need this information in order to freely express yourself as an improviser. You need this information to freely express yourself because these are the building blocks of jazz language, of musical language. It doesn't matter what type of music you're playing. You need to know what the notes are, how they're grouped together, and how to express them in order to be able to freely express yourself when you're going to improvise. At least that's my take on all of this information. I think it's super, super important. That applies beyond just that, just the basics. So people often want to get super hip and they try to learn all kinds of licks and they transcribe all kinds of things. And then they're like, why does it never get into my playing? Well, one is you might not have practiced it enough. So you need to practice it. I say this sometimes, practice it until you can't play it wrong, not until you just play it right. Practice it until you can't play it wrong. You have to really know it, internalize it. One way you might do that is to break things into small segments. Practice one sound, practice one pattern, one measure until you can't play it wrong. So that's number one. So that could go from those basic shapes through to lines, through to approaches, meaning are you using diminished versus altered versus whole tone versus any number of things that you could be applying in jazz vocabulary, and then knowing which things that you should try to take through the 12 keys and which things to internalize, which are, I would suggest, it's a longer conversation, but the short answer is find the 5-to-1 moments, the resolution moments, and use that language as the stuff you should take through the 12 keys because that is the most specific language. Obviously, you can take blues phrases and melodic type phrases through the keys or lines, bebop lines, all those things are good, but that 5-to-1 motion, 2-5-1s is the specific harmonic language that we want to be able to apply in 12 keys. Sounds like a lot of information. You got to dissect it one thing at a time. So I have people do a phrase journal. The phrase journal means one phrase a week that we take through 12 keys. Some people are going to try to do 5 phrases in 12 keys in 1 week and think that that's going to solve their problem. No, it's consistent effort over time that solves the problem. consistent effort over a long period of time. So not just 1 month or one week or 1 day, it's going to be 1 year, 5 years. But if you do this approach, say for 2026, and you keep a phrase journal and you're going to take 1 phrase per week, take it through 12 keys, get it to the point of internalization, not just memorization, and practice applying it, which is the next part that I'm going to get to in just 1 second. Once you practice applying it and you're easily able to apply it, that's when the magical moment happens where it, quote unquote, just appears in your playing. You have to practice the application step. So we've talked about internalization. Now let's talk about application. So if you never practice application, the stuff is never going to magically appear. So the stuff meaning the specific harmonic concepts, stuff meaning the specific language, the specific application of a scale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All these things are great tools, but if you never apply the tools, you're never going to be able to use them in your improvisational context because it's just not how it works. You have to practice the application step. So how do we practice the application step? You have to take something you know really well, like a blues, like rhythm changes or a tune you really like, and then you have to plug and play in a very awkward and forced manner that language. So maybe that means writing an etude that includes the language. Maybe that is just a loop of a 251 on iReal Pro where you plug in, one measure of your phrase and you practice applying it. It really is that simple, but it sounds simple, but it's hard to do. It sounds simple, but it's hard to do. It really is. You have to take that extra step to do it. So what is the answer to the question? Or this is really multiple questions embedded into one concept. How do I get to the point where I don't feel like I'm drawing a blank when I go to the bandstand? Or there's a disconnect between my practice and my performance? Well, this is how you do it. You have to internalize and apply. Internalize and apply. You have to go deep and not wide. You have to have the humble nature about you to go back to the beginning and start again. You have to realize what are the holes in your playing, and then you have to try to fill them. When I was in grad school, I spent the first several months realizing what the holes were, and that I needed to go back and I needed to fill those holes. I needed to deal with a lot of things. That included throwing away all of my real books. It included internalizing tunes, not learning and forgetting tunes. It included learning the piano. It included embracing these tools as essential and not just throwing them away or just thinking everything will be fine. It takes a long time to do this kind of stuff, but it's really important. And I hope that you're able to kind of use this little rant as part of your development and that it answers your questions, especially if you're studying trombone, jazz. Really take some time to think about what I've just been saying about that, and I hope that it helps you in your development.